She texted her mom. Her date felt dangerous. Then a Korean Mafia boss intervened. Mom, something's wrong. My date feels dangerous. If I stop replying, please call the police. 25-year-old Ayomide Daniels sent that text from an upscale Lagos restaurant, her thumb trembling as the message turned blue. Crystal chandeliers, polished wood, quiet jazz. Everything looked perfect. But her pulse was screaming a different story. She was on a dinner date with Sadiq Lawal, a man she'd met through a professional networking event 3 days ago. The same Sadiq whose smile was too practiced, whose questions had shifted from casual to calculated. The same Sadiq who just closed his hand around her wrist and told her she looked tense. Her mother didn't text back. The message showed delivered, but no response came. But someone else in that restaurant was watching. A Korean businessman named Tae-hoon, sitting near the bar in a tailored black suit, no drink in his hand. He'd been tracking patterns. Men like Sadiq, women who looked trapped, moments that felt wrong. And when he saw Sadiq lean in and tell Ayomide, "You shouldn't text people during dinner. It makes men feel disrespected," Tae-hoon stopped watching and started moving. What happened next would force Ayomide to choose between staying silent to avoid a scene and trusting the fear that had kept her ancestors alive. If this story makes you think twice about ignoring your gut feeling, hit that subscribe button, because what you're about to hear could save someone's life. But to understand how Ayomide ended up at that table with a predator, we need to go back 3 days to the networking event that started everything. 3 days earlier, Ayomide had walked into the Eco Hotel and Suites networking event tired but hopeful. Now, standing in this restaurant bathroom, she couldn't remember why she'd ever said yes to dinner with Sadiq Lawal. Her reflection stared back from the mirror above the marble sink. Black fitted dress, gold earrings, makeup still perfect. She looked like a woman in control. Her hands told a different story. They shook as she reread the text she just sent. "Mom, something's wrong. My date feels dangerous. If I stop replying, please call the police." The blue checkmark confirmed delivery. 1 minute passed. Then 2. No response. Ayomide pressed her palms against the cool counter, forcing herself to breathe. The bathroom was all white marble and soft lighting, the kind of luxury that should feel safe. Through the door, she could hear muffled jazz music and the gentle murmur of conversation from the dining room. Everything sounded normal. Her pulse said otherwise. "Leave," a voice whispered in her head. "Just walk out the side exit. Call an Uber. Go home." But what would she tell people? That Sadiq asked too many questions? That he'd chosen the restaurant without consulting her? Ordered her wine without asking her preference? Steered every conversation back to her daily routines? That his smile never quite reached his eyes? She could already hear the responses. "You're overthinking. You're being paranoid. You're sabotaging another potential relationship." Her phone buzzed. Finally. "Mom, baby, you're fine. He's a successful businessman. Stop looking for problems and try to enjoy yourself." Ayomide's chest tightened. She typed back quickly, "Mom, I'm serious. Something feels wrong." The response came faster this time. "Ayomide, you said the same thing about the last 3 men. At some point, you have to stop running from good opportunities." She stared at the screen until the words blurred. Then she did what she'd always done. She obeyed. Ayomide smoothed her dress, checked her lipstick, and forced her shoulders back. Professional smile. Controlled energy. The same mask she'd worn at the networking event when Sadiq first approached her with his business card and his easy confidence. "You never know who you'll meet, baby. Opportunities come through people." Her mother's words echoed as she pushed open the bathroom door. The restaurant glowed with warm elegance. Crystal chandeliers caught the light. White linen tablecloths, polished wood. The kind of place that made danger seem impossible. Sadiq looked up as she approached, his smile perfectly calibrated. "There you are. I was starting to worry." "Sorry," Ayomide said, sliding back into her chair. "Long day." His hand reached across the table and closed around her wrist before she could pull away. Not aggressive. Not yet. Just firm enough to make his point. "Relax," he said softly, his thumb pressing against her pulse point. "You've been tense all evening. Ayomide. She tried to withdraw her arm, but his grip tightened fractionally. Are you? His eyes locked onto hers. You keep checking your phone. It's rude, you know. Makes a man feel like you're not really present. Ayomide's throat went dry. I was just texting your mother? Sadiq's smile widened, but something cold flickered beneath it. I saw the preview on your screen earlier, before you went to the bathroom. Her blood turned to ice. He'd read her message. Sadiq, I think maybe we should. You shouldn't text people during dinner, he interrupted, his voice dropping to something quieter, darker. It makes men feel disrespected. The pressure on her wrist increased. Not painful enough to bruise, but enough to communicate complete control. Ayomide's gaze darted around the restaurant. Other diners laughed and talked, oblivious. The waiter was nowhere in sight. Her phone sat on the table, just inches from Sadiq's other hand. Behind him, reflected faintly in the mirror-lined wall, a man stood near the bar. East Asian, early 40s, tailored black suit, no drink in his hand. He'd been there when she arrived. She'd noticed him peripherally but thought nothing of it. Now she realized he wasn't looking at his phone or the bar menu. He was watching their table, watching Sadiq's hand on her wrist, watching her face. A chair scraped. Ayomide's breath caught as the man began moving toward them with deliberate, unhurried steps. Sadiq was still talking, something about respect and modern women and expectations, but the words faded beneath the sound of approaching footsteps. Then a calm male voice spoke directly behind Sadiq. Take your hand off her. The stranger's voice hung in the air like a held breath. Sadiq turned slowly, his hand still locked around Ayomide's wrist. Excuse me? But Ayomide was already rewinding, already cataloging, already asking herself the question that had been building all evening. How did I end up here? 3 days ago, the Eco Hotel and Suites, a networking event she'd almost skipped. Sadiq had approached her near the refreshment table, confident smile already in place. Ayomide Daniels, right? I heard you speak during the panel on digital marketing. Impressive work. She'd been flattered. He knew her name. He'd paid attention. Thank you, she'd said, accepting his business card. Sadiq Lawal, International Business Consultant. I work with companies expanding into West African markets, he'd explained. Always looking for talented people who understand the landscape. It had felt like opportunity, like professional networking, like exactly what her mother had encouraged her to pursue. When he'd suggested dinner to discuss potential collaboration, she'd said yes without hesitation. Opportunity comes through people. But opportunities don't usually start with questions about your apartment building's security system. The questions had started casually enough. Over appetizers, Sadiq had asked about her commute. Do you drive or use rideshares mostly? Normal small talk. Except he'd followed up with, which route do you usually take home from the office? Then, do you live alone or with roommates? And, your family? Are they here in Lagos or elsewhere? Ayomide had answered reflexively, the way women are taught to be polite, to not make accusations, to give people the benefit of the doubt. But the questions kept coming. Do you travel often for work? International trips. How well do your colleagues know your daily schedule? Your mother, does she live nearby? Would she notice if you were gone for a few days? That last one had made her stomach clench. But when she'd hesitated, Sadiq had laughed it off. Sorry, that sounded strange. I'm just curious about family dynamics. My work involves a lot of cultural consulting. Am I overreacting? The question had circled her mind all evening. Maybe he was just socially awkward. Maybe she was being paranoid like her mother said. Maybe this was what happened when you carried trauma from past relationships into new situations. Maybe, until he'd grabbed her wrist and read her text message. I said, the stranger repeated now, his voice still calm but edged with something that made nearby diners turn. Remove your hand. Sadiq released Ayomide's wrist and stood, his chair scraping back. He was tall, broader than the man facing him. This is a private conversation. No, the stranger said quietly. It isn't. He was close enough now that Ayomide could see the faint scar near his jaw, the way his tailored suit fit like armor, the absolute absence of fear in his eyes. He turned to her, his expression softening fractionally. "Miss, are you here voluntarily?" Ayomide's throat closed. She nodded automatically, the reflex of a woman taught not to cause scenes. Then she stopped, shook her head. "No," she whispered. "I want to leave." The words unlocked something. The stranger placed a hand on Sadiq's shoulder. Not aggressive. Not yet. But the threat was implicit. "Then this conversation is over." Sadiq's charming mask cracked. "You don't know who I know exactly who you are." The stranger cut him off. His voice never rose, but it carried across the suddenly silent restaurant. "You recruit for people who traffic women through fake dates and networking dinners. You prefer foreigners.
Professionals.
Women with fewer local family connections. Less noise when they disappear." Ayomide's vision tunneled. The room tilted. Trafficking. The word landed like a stone dropped into still water, ripples spreading outward. Nearby diners froze mid-bite. A waiter stopped pouring wine. The soft jazz suddenly felt obscene. Sadiq went pale. "That's a lie. That's defamation. I'll have you. You sent 3 women to Busan last year." The stranger continued, his tone conversational, factual. "2 never came back. 1 escaped and told us everything." Silence crashed down. Sadiq's face twisted. The charm evaporated completely, replaced by something raw and ugly. "You self-righteous." He lunged. The car moved through Lagos like a shadow, taking routes Ayomide didn't recognize. Streetlights painted brief gold across Taehoon's face before darkness swallowed them again. She should have been afraid of him. A stranger. A man who'd just disabled another man with terrifying efficiency. A man whose associates appeared from nowhere like trained operatives. But fear had a hierarchy, and right now, Taehoon felt like the only solid thing in a world that had just revealed itself to be made of trapdoors. "Why were you watching him?" she asked. Taehoon was quiet for a moment, his gaze fixed on the passing city. 2 years ago, my niece came to Lagos for a business conference. She was 23, smart, careful, the kind of woman who sent her itinerary to family, who checked in regularly. His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. She met someone at a networking dinner, a businessman, charming, professional. He suggested they meet again to discuss a potential partnership. Taehoon's voice remained steady, but something underneath it had gone very still. She sent one text to her roommate. "Something feels off, but I'm probably overthinking." Ayomide's breath caught. That was the last anyone heard from her. The silence that followed felt like a physical weight. Outside, Lagos continued its oblivious rhythm. Night markets, late traffic, the endless motion of a city that never acknowledged individual tragedies. "Did you find her?" Ayomide asked, though she already knew the answer.
No.
One word, final as a closed door. "But you found the pattern," she said slowly. "Eventually." Taehoon turned to look at her. "It took 8 months and resources most families don't have. By the time I understood what had happened, the network had already moved her. Probably out of the country. Probably." He stopped himself. "After that, I started watching, learning the markers. The men who ask too many questions. The women who look uncomfortable but stay anyway because leaving feels dramatic." Ayomide thought of every moment she'd second-guessed herself tonight. Every time she'd swallowed her discomfort because causing a scene seemed worse than enduring another 15 minutes. "Sadiq was so confident," she said. "Even when you confronted him, like he knew nothing would really happen to him." "Because nothing usually does," Taehoon replied. "Men like him operate with protection, connections, money changing hands in the right places. They know the system won't touch them. But you did." "I'm not the system." The weight of that statement settled between them. Ayomide studied his profile, the expensive suit, the controlled violence she'd witnessed, the way his associates had moved with military precision. "You're not police," she said carefully.
No.
"You're." She hesitated, the word feeling absurd even as she said it. Mafia? Taehoon's expression didn't change. Yes, the confirmation should have terrified her. Instead, it clarified something. Sadiq had operated with confidence because legitimate systems had failed to stop him. But Taehoon existed outside those systems entirely. A different kind of monster, one who hunted the others. How many are there? Ayomide asked. Men like Sadiq? More than you want to know about. Fewer than there used to be. Because of you? Because of people who decided patterns matter more than profit. He turned back to the window. I don't save everyone. I can't. But I never ignore what I recognize. Ayomide pulled his jacket closer. The city lights blurred past, and she realized with sudden, sharp clarity that her entire understanding of safety had been an illusion. Rules and public spaces and texting your mother, none of it had actually protected her. Only Taehoon's willingness to act had. What happens now? She asked. With Sadiq. His network will move him before police can properly investigate. Money buys time. Time buys distance. So he just gets away with it? For now. The injustice of it burned in her chest. 7 women, possibly more. 7 lives stolen or destroyed, and the man responsible would simply relocate and continue. The car slowed, turning into a gated compound Ayomide didn't recognize. She tensed. Where are we? Somewhere safer than your apartment, Taehoon said. You're not taking me home? He met her eyes, and she saw the answer there before he spoke.
No.
The apartment overlooked the Lagos Lagoon, floor-to-ceiling windows framing the city's nighttime shimmer. Expensive furniture, neutral colors, the kind of space that looked like a luxury hotel suite but felt like a very comfortable cage. 2 men stood outside the door. Ayomide had noticed them when Taehoon guided her inside, silent, professional, unmistakably armed. For your protection, he'd said simply. Protection. The word had lost all meaning in the past 3 hours. A woman arrived 20 minutes later, older, efficient, carrying a medical bag. She checked Ayomide's pulse and blood pressure without asking unnecessary questions. Her silence somehow more unsettling than interrogation would have been. Elevated but stable, she told Taehoon in English. Shock, but no immediate medical concerns. She left a bottle of pills on the kitchen counter. For sleep if needed. 1 tablet only. Then she was gone as quietly as she'd arrived. Ayomide stood by the window, Taehoon's jacket still around her shoulders, watching boats move across dark water. Behind her, she heard Taehoon making a quiet phone call in Korean. Clipped, authoritative sentences she couldn't understand. When he finished, she spoke without turning. How long do I have to stay here? Tonight at minimum. Tomorrow we reassess. And if I want to leave now? You're not a prisoner, Taehoon said. But leaving would be unwise. She finally turned to face him. You said Sadiq will retaliate. What does that mean? Taehoon moved to the kitchen, pouring 2 glasses of water. He set one on the counter near her. Men like him don't forgive humiliation. But they're also not stupid. He won't come after you directly. Too obvious, too risky after a public confrontation. Then how? Indirectly. A break-in that looks random. A car accident that seems unfortunate. Something with distance and deniability. He paused. Or he'll wait. Months, maybe. Until everyone forgets. Until you stop being careful. The methodical cruelty of it made Ayomide's stomach turn. So what am I supposed to do? Hide forever?
No.
But you need to be smart about visibility. About patterns. Patterns. The word that had saved her was now her prison. At 2 a.m., Ayomide sat on the leather sofa, unable to sleep despite exhaustion. Her phone rested in her lap, her mother's earlier texts glowing in the darkness. Mom, is everything okay? You stopped responding. She typed carefully. I'm fine. Date ended early. Staying with a friend tonight. The lie tasted bitter, but the truth was impossible to explain. How could she tell her mother that she'd been minutes from being trafficked? That the dramatic fear her mother had dismissed had been the only accurate instinct in the room? Mom. Okay, baby. Get some rest. Ayomide set the phone down and drew her knees to her chest. Taehoon emerged from one of the back rooms, still in his dress shirt and slacks though he'd removed his tie. He didn't ask if she was okay. The answer was obvious. Instead, he sat in the chair across from her, maintaining careful distance. "I just wanted a normal date," Ayomide said quietly. "That's all. Someone to have dinner with, maybe laugh with. Just normal." Her voice cracked on the last word. Taehoon was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of old grief. "So did my niece." The words hung between them, a shared understanding that needed no elaboration. Two people separated by age, culture, and circumstance, connected by the same brutal truth. Wanting normal things didn't protect you from abnormal cruelty. "Does it get easier?" Ayomide asked. "Knowing how close I came?" "No," Taehoon said honestly. "But you learn to carry it differently." She studied him, this man who'd saved her, who now sat across from her at 2 a.m. in a safe house overlooking the lagoon. There was no romance in this moment.
No attraction.
Just two people marked by violence, sitting in the quiet space between rescue and whatever came next. "Thank you," she said, "for watching, for noticing." Taehoon nodded once. "Try to sleep. Tomorrow will require clearer thinking." Ayomide doubted sleep would come, but she moved toward the bedroom anyway. She just closed the door when she heard it. Taehoon's phone, ringing in the pre-dawn darkness. She froze, ear pressed to the door, and heard his voice change, tension sharpening every syllable. Whatever news he was receiving, it wasn't good. Ayomide opened the bedroom door. Taehoon stood by the window, phone still in his hand, his silhouette backlit by the pre-dawn glow spreading across the lagoon. His posture had changed, shoulders tighter, jaw set. "What happened?" she asked. He turned. "Sadiq is gone." The words landed with terrible simplicity. "Gone where?" "We don't know yet." His network moved him within 2 hours of the incident. By the time police arrived at the restaurant to take statements, he'd already been extracted. Taehoon's voice remained level, but something cold flickered beneath it. "They're efficient. They've done this before." Ayomide felt the room tilt slightly. "So he just disappears? And what? Starts over somewhere else?" "Most likely. With a new name? New restaurants? New women?" Yes. The injustice of it hit her like a physical blow. She'd been saved, but the machine that had nearly consumed her was already resetting, recalibrating, preparing to hunt again. "I can't go home," she said, the reality crystallizing. "Can I?" "If he's gone but his network is still operational." "They know where you live," Taehoon confirmed. "They know your routines, your workplace, your mother's address." Panic clawed up Ayomide's throat. "So what am I supposed to do? Change my entire life? Move cities? Quit my job? All because I sent one text?"
No.
"Because you survived something you weren't supposed to survive." Taehoon moved away from the window. "That makes you a complication, and they eliminate complications." Ayomide sank onto the arm of the sofa, her legs suddenly unreliable. "This can't be real. This can't be my life now." "It is." The bluntness should have been cruel, but somehow it felt like the only honest thing anyone had said to her in weeks. No false comfort, no reassuring lies, just the brutal mathematics of danger. "How many?" she asked quietly. "You said there were patterns. Files. How many women?" Taehoon was silent for a moment, as if calculating whether she could handle the answer. 19 that we've confirmed," he finally said. "Across West Africa over the past 3 years. Similar profiles, educated, professional, fewer local family connections. All approached at networking events or professional gatherings. 19. The number sat in Ayomide's chest like a stone. And Sadiq was responsible for all of them?
No.
He's one recruiter in a larger network. There are others doing the same work in different cities, different countries. Ayomide thought of the woman at the restaurant, the efficient doctor who'd checked her vitals and left sleeping pills. She thought of Taehoon's associates who'd materialized from nowhere. The safe apartment, the guards outside, This wasn't improvised. This was infrastructure. You've been building something, she said. Haven't you? This isn't just about your niece anymore. It started with her, Taehoon replied. But grief isn't enough. You need evidence, documentation, testimonies. From women who escaped, from the few who survived and were willing to speak. He paused. Most don't. Fear of retaliation, shame, the knowledge that even if they speak, nothing changes. You're being dramatic. Stop looking for problems. Her mother's voice echoed in Ayomide's head, the same dismissal that had nearly cost her everything. How many other women had been taught to ignore their instincts, to prioritize politeness over survival? If Sadiq's gone, his victims don't get justice, Ayomide said slowly. The women he recruited, they just become statistics, cases that never close. Yes, and the network just finds a replacement. Someone else who asks the wrong questions at networking events. That's how it works. Ayomide stood, pacing to the window. The sun was rising now, painting the lagoon in shades of gold and pink. Beautiful and indifferent. The city waking up, unaware that beneath its polished surface, women were being systematically hunted. She thought about going back to her apartment, her job, her routine, living with the constant awareness that men were watching, calculating, waiting for her guard to drop. She thought about the seventh woman, the one who'd escaped and told them everything. The courage that must have required. She thought about Taehoon's niece, whose last text had been an apology for overthinking. You're collecting testimonies, Ayomide said, turning to face him. Evidence. Why? Taehoon met her eyes. Because eventually, enough voices become too loud to ignore. The silence stretched between them. Then Taehoon spoke two words that changed everything. Help me. The recording equipment was minimal. A single camera, a microphone, a laptop displaying a simple interface with a red recording indicator. No branding. No identifying information. Just a black backdrop and a chair positioned in neutral lighting. Your face will be obscured, Taehoon explained. Voice altered. No names. Nothing that could trace back to you unless you choose otherwise. Ayomide sat in the chair, hands folded in her lap. Dawn had fully broken outside, but here in this windowless room within the safe house, time felt suspended. One of Taehoon's associates, a woman this time, younger with kind eyes, adjusted the camera angle. Whenever you're ready, she said gently. Take your time. Stop whenever you need to. The red light blinked on. Ayomide took a breath. My name is... She stopped, remembering. I'm 25. I work in marketing. 3 days ago, I met a man at a networking event. The words came slowly at first, halting. She recounted Sadiq's approach, his business card, the dinner invitation that had seemed professional, normal. But as she continued, the details sharpened. His questions about her daily routine, the way he'd ordered for her without asking, how he'd insisted on a specific restaurant, a specific table. He asked about my family, Ayomide said, her voice steadier now. Whether they lived nearby, whether I traveled often for work, whether my colleagues knew my schedule well. She paused, swallowing hard. I answered everything, because that's what women do. We're taught that silence is rude, that boundaries are dramatic, that fear is something to apologize for. The camera captured everything, her hands gripping the armrests, the way her jaw tightened when she described the wrist grab, the moment her voice cracked recounting the text she'd sent her mother. I told her something was wrong, Ayomide whispered, and she told me I was being paranoid, that I sabotage good opportunities, that I needed to stop running from successful men. The room was silent except for her breathing. If I'd listened to her instead of my fear, I wouldn't be here right now. After, the woman with kind eyes brought tea. Ayomide's hands shook as she held the cup. You did well, the woman said quietly. I know it doesn't feel like it, but you were clear, detailed. That matters. How many testimonies do you have? Ayomide asked. Counting yours? 14. 14 women. 14 near misses. 14 stories of instinct dismissed and politeness weaponized. Can I? Ayomide hesitated. Can I hear any of them? The woman glanced at Taehoon, who stood in the corner, arms crossed. He considered for a moment, then nodded. The voices played through the laptop speakers. All altered, all anonymous, but the details were horrifyingly consistent. He asked where I lived, what floor, whether the building had security cameras. He insisted on driving me home, said it wasn't safe for a woman alone at night. When I refused, his whole demeanor changed. I woke up in a hotel room I didn't remember entering. My phone was gone. The door was locked from the outside. 3 weeks later, I was in another country. I still don't know how they got me across the border. One woman's voice, young, shaking, described being held in a house with 5 other women. Another detailed the auction system, the way they were categorized by appearance and education level. A third simply said, I got out because one of the guards fell asleep. That's the only reason I'm alive. Ayomide's tea went cold in her hands. 14 testimonies, she said numbly. 19 confirmed victims. How many more are still out there? We estimate 3 times what we've documented, Taehoon replied. Most never report. Most never escape. And what happens with these recordings? We build cases, share them with specific journalists, international organizations, people who won't bury the story. He paused. But it's slow. These networks have protection at every level. Police, politicians, businessmen who profit from the system. So you're fighting more than just men like Sadiq. Much more. Ayomide set down her cup. And if I do this, if I add my voice to these 14, what happens to me? Taehoon's expression remained neutral, but something shifted in his eyes. You become part of a larger fight. One that doesn't end quietly. They'll know I spoke. Eventually, yes, even with precautions. And they'll retaliate. They'll try. The truth settled over her like a heavy coat. Speaking meant she could never slip back into anonymity. Could never pretend this hadn't happened. Could never be just another woman walking through the world unmarked by what she'd survived. She looked at the camera, its red light now dark. I can never be invisible again, she said quietly. No, Taehoon confirmed. You can't. The first sign came 3 days later. Ayomide noticed the car on her way to work. A silver sedan, 2 cars back, that had been parked outside her mother's house when she'd stopped by that morning. When she changed lanes, it changed lanes. When she turned into her office parking garage, it drove past slowly before circling the block. She texted Taehoon immediately. His response came within seconds. Don't go inside. Stay visible. We're coming. 20 minutes later, she sat in a different car with 2 of Taehoon's associates, watching her office building from a distance. Silver Honda Accord, one of them said into his phone, reading off the license plate. Registered to a shell company. Same one tied to 3 previous surveillance operations. Taehoon's voice came through the speaker. Bring her back to the safe house. Now. They're probing, Taehoon explained that evening. Testing your routines. Seeing if you're still being careful. Ayomide stood by the window of the safe house, arms wrapped around herself. How long does this last? Until they decide you're not worth the risk. Or until they find an opening. That's not an answer. It's the only honest one I have. She turned to face him. Who protects them? These networks, they move people across borders, disappear women, operate for years. Someone has to be looking the other way. Taehoon's expression darkened. Police who accept payments to lose paperwork. Border agents who don't ask questions. Businessmen who provide legitimate covers for illegitimate operations. Politicians who block investigations. Power protecting power. Always. Ayomide felt something harden in her chest. And you? What makes you different? I don't pretend to be legitimate, Taehoon said simply. I'm not bound by laws that were written to protect the very people who break them. It should have frightened her. Instead, it clarified something essential. The world she'd believed in, where rules mattered and institutions protected, had never actually existed. That night, Ayomide called her mother. "Baby, where have you been?" Rosie's voice carried worry and irritation in equal measure. "You stopped by for 10 minutes 3 days ago and haven't answered my calls since." "Mom, I need to tell you something." Ayomide's voice was steady. "And I need you to listen without interrupting." Silence. Then, "What's wrong?" "That date you told me to go on. With Sadiq. The one where you said I was being dramatic and paranoid." She paused. "He was a human trafficker, Mom. He recruits women through networking events. I was being targeted." "Ayomide, that's—" I said don't interrupt. The sharpness in her own voice surprised her. "I texted you from that restaurant bathroom. I told you something felt dangerous. And you told me I was sabotaging good opportunities." "I didn't know." "You didn't listen." Ayomide's throat tightened. "I almost disappeared, Mom. I almost became one of those women on the news that people feel sad about for 5 minutes before moving on with their lives. And it would have happened because you taught me to ignore my fear." Rosie's breathing was audible through the phone. "How was I supposed to know?" "You weren't. But you were supposed to trust me. To believe me when I said I felt unsafe." Ayomide closed her eyes. "I'm 25 years old. And I'm just now learning that my survival matters more than your comfort." "That's not fair, Ayomide." "Maybe not. But it's true." The silence stretched between them, years of unspoken expectations and suppressed instincts finally surfacing. "I love you, Mom," Ayomide said quietly. "But I'm choosing myself. Even when it disappoints you. Even when it seems dramatic. Especially then." She ended the call before her mother could respond. Her hands were shaking, but something inside her felt lighter, clearer. The next morning, Taehoon's phone buzzed during breakfast. Ayomide watched his expression shift as he read the screen. Recognition, then resignation. "What is it?" she asked. He turned the phone toward her. A news article. Small. Buried on page 7 of the local section. Woman, 26. Reported missing after networking event. Family seeks information. The photograph showed a young woman in professional attire, smiling at the camera. Confident. Educated. The same type Sadiq targeted. Ayomide's stomach dropped. "When?" she whispered. 2 nights ago. Port Harcourt. Another city. Another woman. Another man who asked the wrong questions. Ayomide stared at the photo, seeing her own reflection in those hopeful eyes. "We were too late," she said. "We're always too late for someone," Taehoon replied quietly. "That's why we keep building the case." But the words felt hollow against the weight of that smile, frozen in time before everything changed. Dawn broke over the Lagos lagoon in shades of amber and rose, light spilling across water like liquid gold. Ayomide stood at the window of the safe house, phone in her hands, watching the city wake up. Behind her, Taehoon made quiet calls in Korean, coordinating the response to the Port Harcourt disappearance. His team was already moving, gathering information, tracking patterns, documenting everything. Always documenting. Ayomide opened her messages. Her mother's name sat at the top of the list, their last conversation ending in painful silence. She hesitated, then began typing.
Ayomide, Mom, I'm okay.
"I listened to my fear. It saved my life." She stared at the words for a long moment before pressing send. The response came faster than expected. "Mom, I'm sorry, baby. I should have listened." "Mom, are you safe?" Ayomide's throat tightened. "As safe as I can be." "Mom, what does that mean?" "It means the world is more dangerous than we wanted to believe. But I'm learning to navigate it." There was a pause. Then, "Mom, I love you, even when I get it wrong." "Ayomide, I know. I love you too." It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. But it was acknowledgement. A small crack in the wall between them. That would have to be enough for now. Taehoon ended his call and moved to stand beside her at the window. They watched the city in silence. Millions of people moving through their routines, unaware of the quiet wars being fought in the margins. "The woman from Port Harcourt," Ayomide said. "Will you find her?" "We'll try." "That's not the same as yes." "No," he agreed. It's not. The honesty was brutal, but Ayomide had learned to prefer it to comfortable lies. Sadiq is still out there, she said. Free. Planning his next move. Yes. So we didn't really stop him. We just delayed him. Taehoon turned to look at her. We did something more important than stopping one man. What? We made him visible. He gestured toward the laptop in the next room where her testimony, and 13 others, lived in encrypted files. Every woman who speaks removes a layer of camouflage from these networks. Every testimony makes it harder for them to operate in silence. But they're still operating. For now. But the rules have shifted. His gaze returned to the city. Predators rely on predictability, on women who ignore their instincts, who prioritize politeness, who disappear quietly. That system only works when everyone plays their assigned role. Ayomide understood what he was saying. And I didn't. You sent a text. You trusted your fear. You refused to disappear quietly. Taehoon's voice carried quiet intensity. Now every man like Sadiq has to wonder. Which woman is protected? Which one will speak? Which restaurant has someone watching? The mathematics of fear had been recalculated. It's not enough, Ayomide said. One testimony. 14 testimonies. There are still hundreds of women being trafficked.
No.
It's not enough.
Taehoon is javtaittened.
But it's more than yesterday. And tomorrow it will be more than today. Outside, the sun climbed higher. Boats moved across the lagoon. Lagos continued its endless motion, beautiful and brutal, indifferent to individual suffering but shaped by the accumulation of small resistances. Ayomide thought of the woman in Port Harcourt, of Taehoon's niece, of the 7 women Sadiq had sent to Busan, 2 of whom never returned. She thought of her own reflection in that restaurant bathroom, hands shaking as she typed a message that would change everything. What happens now? She asked. We keep building the case, keep documenting, keep making them visible.
Taehoon paused.
And we wait for the next text message. The next woman who senses danger? Yes. And you'll be watching? Always. It wasn't a happy ending. There were no neat resolutions, no justice served, no closure. Sadiq remained free. The networks continued operating. Power still protected predators. But something fundamental had shifted. A text message had been sent and answered. Pattern had been disrupted. A woman who should have vanished was standing at a window, watching the sunrise, choosing to speak instead of disappear. Ayomide turned from the window. I want to do more than just my testimony. Taehoon studied her. What do you mean? Other women. The ones who feel something's wrong but convince themselves they're overreacting. I want them to know. She paused, finding the right words. I want them to know their fear is trying to save them. A faint smile touched Taehoon's expression. Then we have work to do. Across the city, in rooms and restaurants and networking events, women navigated the complex mathematics of danger and politeness. Some would ignore their instincts. Some would disappear. But somewhere, a woman would feel the familiar clutch of fear, would reach for her phone, would type a message that felt dramatic, excessive, paranoid. And this time, someone would be watching. This time, the text wouldn't go unanswered. Some texts don't go unanswered.